Hey guys, before I start this video, I just want to mention one quick thing. So if you want to skip this part and get to the good stuff, use the timestamps in the description below. So with that out of the way, I'm here to announce that I got a Patreon now. I've been thinking about doing one for a while, primarily since I've grown more confident in my content and what I can do with it. And also for a couple of people, you kind of noticed that I announced that I was getting a Patreon way before this video came out, and that's because my mic died. But back to the point. Right now, I got a $1 tier for anyone who wants to see any future videos a day early, and a $5 tier for anyone who wants their name shown at the end of the video, except for right now, because I'm going to break this rule and say who's paying it as I'm writing this. For an example, for this section, it's Noah Howard. Noah Howard's the only person paying $5. If you want to see content early or want your name at the end of the video, go down to my Patreon in the description below. And yeah, I guess the plug's over. Let's get to the video. Satoshi Kon is one of the most unique and fascinating figures in the history of cinema. Instead of being compared to Osamu Tezuka, his name was often mentioned in the same sentence as Stanley Kubrick or Quentin Tarantino. As stated 100 times over by numerous people on this platform and others, his filmography is the stuff of legend. From his timeless horror classic Perfect Blue in 1997, arguably one of the greatest cinematic debuts ever, to his last film Paprika in 2006, still regarded today as a masterpiece in the world of animation. But in one fell swoop, one of anime's most polarizing directors turned into the industry's biggest what-if story, as he suddenly passed away on August 24th, 2010, of terminal pancreatic cancer, which, around the release of this video, would be over 10 years ago, but honestly, it feels longer. In late 2018, while I was still showing my face on camera, I reviewed Perfect Blue, but didn't consider making any more Kon videos after that, for some reason. Fast forward 2 years later, and here I am looking to continue what I started, and what better place to continue than with the film which many people around the anime sphere, and even some non-anime fans, have regarded as an amazing film, with some saying it's Kon's best work. If you ask me, that's a pretty bold statement. But nevertheless, I decided to take a look and see why this film still resonates with people nearly 20 years after its release. My name is Payne, and this is Millennium Actress. The story begins when it establishes that an old film studio is going out of business and is being torn down. We follow Genya Tachibana and his cameraman Kyoji Ida as they track down Chiyoko Fujiwara, the studio's best-known star who has since lived as a recluse for decades. When Tachibana gives Chiyoko a key she lost long ago, she reflects on her life and her pursuit of a man with that very same key. And soon enough, her memories and the film she starred in become intertwined in a surreal story within a story. To get a good idea of how Millennium Actress came to be, we have to go back to 1998, 1 year after the initial release of Perfect Blue, which was growing in popularity at the time, and slowly but surely Kon's name was being put on the cinematic map. He decided what to adapt for his next project, that being the award-winning novel Paprika by Yasutaka Tsutsui, but it was put on hold as Rex Entertainment, the same company that financed Perfect Blue, went bankrupt before Kon could even do anything. That was until producer Taro Maki, who saw the film and appreciated its ability to blur the lines between reality and fantasy, approached Kon with the offer to produce his next film if he was going to do the same thing, calling that specific style a trompe-l'oeil, which is French for deceive the eye. For anyone who is unfamiliar with the term, you definitely know what it looks like, as it is best presented in the form of 3D street art. Once in a while, I would see pictures of it. It's pretty awesome. There's multiple examples of it. This got the ball rolling for Kon once again creatively. He got help from Perfect Blue's screenwriter Sadayuki Murai and began brainstorming ideas for their next film, which, according to a 2002 interview Kon did with Midnight Eye, Perfect Blue was intended to be a positive film, but as production went on, that turned out not to be the case. Taking his last film and its emerging success into account, he decided to make a sister film which shows the positive side of the relationship between admirer and idol, which, according to Murai in a 2003 interview provided by DreamWorks, plays a pivotal part in the structure of the film itself, with the idol Chiyoko's subjective view of her life. But when the admirer Genya's perspective comes into the mix, it shows the whole story. While the stories do overlap, leading to this effect, Genya's story doesn't intrude and take over the already established narrative, showing his quote-unquote male gaze is of concern and respect compared to the antagonist from Perfect Blue, Mii-Mania's male gaze, which is of mostly betrayal. The film first premiered in July of 2001 at Fantasia International Film Festival in Canada, where it won the award for Best Animated Feature Film, and won the grand prize at the Japan Agency of Cultural Affairs Media Arts Festival, tying with Hayao Miyazaki's Spirited Away. But it wouldn't be until over a year later, in September of 2002, when it would premiere in Japan. As for the US, it was licensed by the art house and foreign movie publishing company Go Fish Productions, where it made a measly $37,000+ in 6 theaters for 3 weeks in New York and LA, thanks to the lack of advertising from the now defunct company, before being released in DVD in late 2003. The film was one of 3 anime films to be submitted for an Oscar nomination for Best Animated Feature alongside Pokemon Heroes and, funny enough, Kon's next film, Tokyo Godfathers, but was not nominated, and in the 2004 Annie Awards it was nominated for 4 categories: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay, and Best Voiceover Performance for Miyoko Shoji, who played the old Chiyoko, but also didn't win. The first English dub for the film was released in 2005 in the United Kingdom, and in May of 2019, LA-based anime films distribution company 11 Arts acquired the North American rights to the film and announced they partnered with Fathom Events to bring Millennium actress back into theaters on August 13th of that year, and 6 days later released a brand new English dub. When I looked into this film and the screenplay, it made me realize how much care Kon and Murai put into it, which adds on to the positive intentions they both had for this film that never came to be in Perfect Blue. There are a couple of recurring images throughout the film which both represent the same thing, that being the flying lotus flower and a red-crowned crane. The lotus can be seen in one of the first shots of the movie, and when Genya and Kyoji walk into Chiyoko's home, she mentions she has a lotus garden. As for the crane, its first appearance is also in Chiyoko's house, seen behind Genya and Kyoji as they wait for Chiyoko to arrive, and it's seen in the background in many shots throughout the film. Because both the lotus flower and the crane live for an incredibly long time in their respective species, it's been thought by scholars to represent love, peace, purity, nobility, and most importantly, longevity, given that this film is about looking back through someone's life. And when those two aren't on screen, thanks to the color palette this movie has, the amazing color palette, their presence is still there, as there are barely any scenes in the film where neither Genya, Chiyoko, or the man with the key are seen without wearing some sort of red, white, or pink, the colors of the lotus and crane, and it also works in Chiyoko's favor a little bit more, as the memories she remembers the most are given more vibrant colors while leaving the rest of the setting black and white. This plays a pivotal part in conveying what this film actually is: a love letter to both Japan and Japanese cinema, more specifically, the people who kept on making films even after the devastating loss of life that was World War II. And there are a number of moving parts that make this film compelling to so many people. To start off, when I started doing research for this video, the first piece of information I found was that the character Chiyoko was based off the lives of 2 prominent Japanese actresses, Setsuko Hara and Hideko Takamine, but I've yet to find any reason why Takamine was even mentioned, so let's just stick to the former. Beginning in around the late 1940s and 50s, Setsuko Hara became the face of the golden era of Japanese cinema and was known for her performances in films directed by Yasujiro Ozu, such as Late Spring, Early Summer, and Tokyo Story. But when Ozu passed away in 1963, she decided to abruptly retire from acting at only 43 years old, and she lived as a recluse until her death in 2015 at the age of 95. The film also makes homage to numerous other films from the 40s and 50s, as well as a couple of quote-unquote recent films, such as the 1973 action drama Lady Snowblood, which is known for inspiring the Kill Bill series, and the 1985 samurai epic Ran from legendary director Akira Kurosawa. But the most relevant reference it makes plot-wise is from another Kurosawa film, 1957's Throne of Blood. In addition to referencing the final scene of the film, in which the main character has a lot of actual arrows shot at him, it's where Kon and Murai take a recurring character and uses it as the manifestation of Chiyoko's inner turmoil, fueled by her fears of growing old and losing her purity, embodied in the form of a demon spirit who I'll talk more about later in this video. One thing I completely overlooked about this film is its social commentary on not only Japan during World War II, but America too. When Chiyoko initially finds the man with the key, she finds out he's an artist and political dissident who was against the Second Sino-Japanese War in the late 1930s. She helps him escape from the authorities, one of whom is a recurring character who is only credited as the man with the scar, who represents the imperial forces that terrorized both the world and Japan itself from the late 30s until their surrender in 1945. This is shown in a later scene when the man with the scar arrests the man with the key for protesting the ethics of the empire during the war. The man with the scar appears at the end of the movie to apologize to Chiyoko, a moment which can be interpreted as the country apologizing to either the Japanese people, the film industry, or both, regardless they're portrayed by Chiyoko, for the horrors they faced because of their ignorance of life during that terrible period. But, like I said earlier, Japan wasn't the only one put in check. In what I believe to be the best scene in all of Kon's filmography, Chiyoko is seen standing in the middle of a destroyed landscape. Unlike every other scene in the film, barely anything is moving, except for probably a plane in the background. The colors around her say there is no life here, and the neutral color she wears indicates there's nothing to chase after. These shots were poignant to me personally because this is Kon saying not only did Japan have to endure their own struggles, but also profiles the numerous senseless acts the US Army put on the citizens of Japan who had nothing to do with the war at all. In a way, this is the current era Japanese people asking the Western audience to be morally consistent with them, reminding us of what we did, which led to what they went through, which makes this film more prevalent in my eyes because of the time that this film came out. It premiered at Fantasia International Film Festival a month and a half before 9/11, and when it premiered in America, the Iraq War was already in progress, and ever since then, it hasn't gotten any better. There is a sense of dread pouring through me as I'm talking about this, as I wrote this, knowing when this film came to the US, a film that was calling for peace and good morals, we were already not following them. And 16 years later, it has not changed. But back to the film. This scene, in turn, leads to Chiyoko going back into starring in films, showing a montage where she steps in and out of multiple pictures of film crews, a way for the film to celebrate all great minds like Setsuko Hara, like Ozu, and like Kurosawa, among many, many other people, from the director to an apprentice, anybody who played a part in making a film, basically, who overcame this huge obstacle in order to make some of the greatest films ever made. A way for Kon, Murai, and everyone at Studio Madhouse to say thank you to their country for still telling stories and staying somewhat pacifistic since the war, and calls for other countries to at least try to do the same. Therefore, because in this film Chiyoko lived through that same period, she strives for peace herself, just like the man with the key. The one thing that makes Chiyoko's pursuit towards him worth it is the man's pursuit towards solidarity in a world where very little of it can be found, as shown once again by his arrest midway through the film. It didn't matter what the man looked like. We never see his face. His beliefs were his character, and that's all we as an audience needed to know. The 9-minute span towards the end of the movie is one of the most incredible sequences I have ever seen in a film, period. It's like something out of Being John Malkovich, only better. Not only are the transitions extremely smooth, but it also reveals something internally as well about her. Considering the movie is about the passage of time, we see Chiyoko getting younger as she transitions into different points in her life, because, as she says at the end of the film, chasing after him was what was keeping her young, keeping her purity intact. Chiyoko is approached again by the demon spirit from Throne of Blood I mentioned earlier, who appears to Chiyoko at different points in the film, again embodying Chiyoko's fears of feeling old, a fear she attempts to relinquish earlier in the film by drinking a lotus tea in their initial encounter. After seeing it one more time, she's later taken to a hospital where she passes away, but even though she was on her way after an amazing and eventful life, because she kept holding on to that ideal, she was able to leave at the end of the movie the same way she did at the beginning of the movie, with Chiyoko being launched into the great beyond that is space, in a state of rebirth out of a blossoming lotus. The decision to put the ending at the beginning represents the endless cycle between Genya, Chiyoko, and the man with the key in search for some form of unrequited love, one after the other, before any flashbacks were made. All of these aspects not only make Millennium Actress amazing, dare I say, a classic, but it also reminds us that all you need is love. As what I said for the last, I don't know how many minutes of this video didn't say enough, I thought the screenplay was fantastic. Definitely one of the most dense and substantive scripts I've ever seen for an anime film. It was able to show the absence, the loss, and the pursuit of love through its characters, and is able to seamlessly mix it in with love of the script itself. This is the first Kon film where Susumu Hirasawa composed the score, and it was outstanding. I'm going to talk more about him as I talk more about Kon's films. When watching the film for this video, I saw the subbed version, and there wasn't really anything off from what I remember, and the only noteworthy part I noticed was Chiyoko's performance at the end. Really ramped everything up. As usual, the editing was stellar, and was practically a character in and of itself, and being that this film came out of Studio Madhouse, the animation was also fantastic, as different art styles were portrayed during different points of Chiyoko's life, while also having a life of its own in the plot as well. Overall, Millennium Actress is one of those movies that just sticks in your head for all the right reasons, and just makes you want to watch it again and again. Not only is it easily suggestible, but bonus points if the person you're suggesting it to knows a lot about Japanese cinema. That guy's going to be on a field day. It's not every day when you see a film that represents its love for its country, cinema, peace, and love itself. But thank God for Millennium Actress.